What is going on, Sports Wars? We're here. We're live on a Tuesday, which I don't think that's ever really happened before unless we have some sort of crazy breaking news. That's not why we're here today. We are here today because Sports Wars is entering into the fantasy football fray, which is something we've wanted to do here for quite some time. And now we're big enough. We got so much stuff going on. We're going to continue to expand. Fantasy football is something that I've been doing for the past decade, and it's something that we really wanted to get into. So I have with me a special guest, his first appearance on Sports Wars, his first appearance on any stream ever, as far as I know. LaRock, what's going on, man?
How you doing, Ryan? Good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. Now, David, you are a guy who's been extremely involved with fantasy football and sports gambling and things like that, and you're extremely dedicated to it. And you've worked with Jeremy before in the past. So when we started thinking about this, Jeremy kind of got us in contact, and it was like it's the perfect fit because you are definitely a guy who knows what he's talking about when it comes to projections and numbers and all these things. And I am going to be playing the role of a normie fantasy guy, because that's kind of what I consider myself, right? Someone who has played a lot, but isn't there doing like the day-to-day research like people like you are. So why don't you introduce yourself to Sports Wars a little bit? As you there it is. I was going to say as you freeze up a little bit for me, but go ahead. I think you guys are seeing the freeze as well, but that's all right. Listen,
new house, new, terrible.
Anyway, he's got that Jeremy internet, right? He has got that Jeremy from Sports Wars internet. You guys know it, so we got to bring it when David comes back on as well. Can you hear me, Dave? This is how it goes, right? We have this crystal clear image. We're ready to go. We're ready to rock and roll. I waste all my time with this introduction as David signals perfectly clear. And then it's time for David to go.
Terrible. Okay. Yeah, fantasy football for quite a while. Know Jeremy from back in the day, and he thought that this would be a match. So my goal is to just give my opinion and my analytical brain, I guess, to just try to help. And yeah, the difference of opinions, if you hear whatnot, that's cool. As long as you have some skin in the game. And
he's going off Jeremy's Wi-Fi. Jeremy neglected to tell you that this is something that happens.
Their numbers, they don't lie.
You are skipping out a lot, David. Unfortunately, if you wouldn't mind, if you could just bounce out, reset your router maybe, and then come back. I'll go ahead. I'll cover. There we go. I'll go ahead and I'll cover some stuff that happened today that is going to be very impactful going forward. So that's what happens, everybody. We have something big. We want to do something. We want to expand Sports Wars, take this to the next level. And of course, that's what happens. But it's all right. We got a lot of stuff planned for you guys in the coming weeks and in the coming months, whether it's fantasy football, whether it's sports gambling. But the big story that so many people are talking about today is obviously the return of Aaron Rodgers comes back. And if you've been watching the Sports Wars stream, this is something that I've been saying was going to happen for a long time, regardless of who thought what, regardless of who said what. I said, I think Aaron Rodgers is just trying to make a statement that Aaron Rodgers will definitively be back there. And, of course, that's what happens. He makes an entrance. Now, here's Big Cat. I'm hearing reports that Aaron Rodgers has arrived to clean out his locker one last time before retirement. Obviously, Big Cat, a Bears fan like myself, not super happy probably that Aaron's coming back. I know I'm not. But here's Aaron Rodgers with a fucking man bun and flip-flops heading into camp. Now, there was a lot of viral stuff with this going on today, specifically with the return of Aaron Rodgers. He has been keeping in the news intentionally. Here's fucking the shirt that he was wearing. The Office, Kevin Malone versus Chili with NBA Jam right here. So he's having fun. He's having a good time, and that's all right. Aaron Rodgers coming back is obviously a big news for the NFL, but it is very, very big news when it comes to fantasy. I never really thought that this was going to be a situation where you had Aaron Rodgers sit out the season, that he wouldn't be available, that people would have to have Jordan Love as the quarterback, and that would affect so many people's value. That would definitely affect Aaron Jones' value. That would definitely affect Devontae Adams' value. Now what do we have? We have everything back to normal. Someone said Karen Rodgers. That's funny you say that. That's funny you say Karen Rodgers. There we go. K-A-Ron. Karen Rodgers. But yeah, so the Aaron Rodgers return does mean a lot in terms of fantasy. And I see Jeremy's chatting with me here. Let me check DMs really quick. Again, we do apologize for the technical difficulties. That's what happens. That's what happens when you get excited for something. So we're gonna invite somebody else on here while David Larock, tries to get his internet fixed. All of those things, and those things happen. We got an amateur streamer. Never been. He was so excited to be here with you guys. That's just what happens. But we have someone else. Now, when you think of people that are analytical, when you think of people that are good with numbers, most people don't think Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers. But here he is. What's up, man?
What's going on? Yeah, David lives near me, and we have the same internet, clearly. So we clearly have the same internet.
Yes.
But hopefully he can get that situated. I might be freezing up too, for all I know. I have no idea. It's absolutely insane how it works around here. But happy to be here. And yes, I've known David a long time. And he knows football. He knows the analytics of football better than anyone I know. He's not a Tebow fan though, which is a problem for me.
Because he knows football. Yes.
So somebody's already talking about it. Luke Stolen is is already talking about it. Now we're gonna hear Jeremy talk about drafting Tebow. But no, we do. We've got a great opportunity ahead of us with fantasy football. And more of the gambling picks and things we're going to try to dip our toes into at some point. I've never done fantasy football, and I've never wanted to do fantasy football for a lot of different reasons, but the game is changing. It's something that I've been asked to do for a long time, and I'm probably going to try to do my best to learn the ropes a little bit. I mean, like you said, you're a normie compared to someone like David. You know what I mean? And so I think that's going to be a good kind of blend and that we have here. Plus, probably going to get a couple more voices on here too that have some experience from that perspective. Names that you probably know, people that you're aware of, but the support that we get is going to be very important because we're trying to take this to the next level. Yes, we complain about sports a lot. Yes, we call out the bullshit a lot, but at our core, we are still sports fans. You know what I mean? And I did see we're talking about Aaron Rodgers, which, again, I think Aaron Rodgers, I'm sure a lot of you saw my video, or at least, I don't know, 3 or 4 of you saw my video.
Yeah, it's about 3,000 people. Yeah.
And I'm not a fan of Aaron Rodgers, but I respect him. And obviously him being back in Green Bay is a positive for the NFL. Just think he's a diva. And I think that Karen haircut is the best example of him.
Yeah, exactly. And it was important for fantasy, and this did affect betting lines. Affected a lot. There were some people that were able to pick up the Packers on bets, and some sports books had them at 8.5 wins. Which now with the return of Aaron Rodgers, those numbers have shot back up to around 10.5, 11 at most sports books when you're talking over/under win totals.
It's like I'm freezing up too. I'm freezing up too.
A bit, yeah, you are.
God, Florida internet's trash.
People. Yeah, I can't wait to move there. Jesus Christ. But yeah, when it does come to fantasy, I'm someone who for the past decade has been playing fantasy football in a variety of different ways. Jeremy is truly, we're going to make him play football this year. The entire thing that we're planning on doing, which I was going to explain while David is here, is, we're going to get a lot of different takes. We're going to have David, who is that very pure analytical person. We're going to have myself, who's a little more normie, but at the same time has a lot of experience playing fantasy football. And we're going to have Jeremy, who knows nothing about it. It's going to be his first year getting into it. And so we're going to do some previews. We're going to do some things like that. And ultimately, probably week 3 or week 4 of preseason, we are going to do a draft. We're going to do a streamed draft right here in front of you guys, where you can watch us pick our teams along with a couple other people on the Geeks and Gamers and Sports Wars team. And we can track it throughout the season. It'll be a blast. And Jeremy will then understand that sometimes the big names aren't necessarily the best picks. And that's one of the things that, me and David had planned on talking about. But
yeah,
go ahead, Jeremy.
And I'm aware of the basics and everything. I know that's why Aaron Rodgers is historically been one of the better fantasy players, because he puts up insane numbers. He has an insane TD touchdown to interception ratio. What's up, David?
Hopefully this works. I got an entirely new computer.
You just got a new computer.
I got a new computer, so this is what I do for y'all.
There you go, man.
Well, my Florida internet sucks too, so don't worry.
It's terrible. It's the alligators and the humidity.
I'm not looking forward to moving there. I wasn't looking forward to before. Now I'm really not looking forward to it, because evidently my internet will just be dog shit then as well. We'll all match. But David, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody? We didn't really hear too much of it before.
Internet's awful. So my name is David LaRock. I've been doing fantasy for, I don't know, seems like fucking forever. Mostly it's a little bit of daily fantasy. Did some redraft stuff and some dynasty stuff back in college and whatnot. But I know Jeremy from back in the day, and we used to argue all the time about his incorrect takes because he's all about the eye test, and the eye test will win you no fantasy games. So we can just get that squared away.
If he was all about the eye test, he wouldn't like Tim Tebow. Just to be
correct.
But so that is a weird one.
To be fair, there's one thing LaRock and I do agree on, and that is the greatness of Tom Brady. We do agree on that, and we always have. But that's the only thing we've ever really, truly agreed on when it comes down to the potatoes of our sports arguments. We did. I've told the story many times about how you and I used to have the managers try to, they're like, guys, stop arguing on the aisle, because he was a vendor, and I worked in the store, and we would just be arguing. Old ladies would be running from the aisle we were on, because we're just cussing each other out over our takes on. Well, I think we were arguing over best big men in NBA history.
It was something stupid.
So, yeah, and just yelling, passionately yelling. Didn't even know each other that good at that point. But I'm like, I like this guy. And then I've always told the story about how me and you went to Buffalo Wild Wings during that Sunday night football game.
Correct.
Patriots, Broncos. Patriots got, 27-0, 24-0 in the first half. Broncos were up
24. Yeah.
You literally got up and said, I can't do this anymore. I'm not at my spot at home. And you left. You just fucking left.
I left.
I was like, of course, Patriots did come back and win. So you kind of
right.
You made the right call.
Yes. I did. I always do.
Now I see we do have a question here. Who goes number 1 standard PPR? I like, to me, I don't really see too many people not picking Christian McCaffrey as long as he's healthy coming into camp. But
can I play devil's advocate?
Yes, yeah.
I will go, if you're thinking outside the box, I would go Alvin Kamara, especially for the fact that Michael Thomas is going to be out for, I don't know, 6 weeks, they say minimum. But a high ankle sprain is like high ankle fucked, right? Like, it's just, the surgery's not going to be good. It's a new system. I think Sean Payton's smart enough. They're going to run a lot of Taysom Hill. And we saw the targets that Kamara got when Breeze was out, and they're in a dome. McCaffrey is going to still put up numbers, but that team is so bad that I'm afraid they're going to run him into the ground again.
They have been bad, yeah, and that's he's not going to have. I don't think he is going to have a very long career, because he's a workhorse who wants to be a workhorse.
And again,
you know what I mean? Like, he takes pride in it, and I love that. I love that about Christian McCaffrey. And if he's on the field, you are going to get a ton of value out of him. But
sure. The problem
he played
is
three games last year, right?
Yeah.
And he was done.
Yeah. So I mean, the issue is, especially with it being a longer season, It's going to be tough. I mean, you can even make a case for Dalvin Cook. I wouldn't hate it. Their defense is going to be better. It's going to be the same Dalvin as last year. But again, the hamstring issues. I mean, running backs are fragile.
You only have a couple workhorses in the NFL, really, and a lot of them are injury prone. This is why running backs are seemingly a dime a dozen when it comes to these guys who all of a sudden put up these crazy numbers. You pick them up on a waiver, maybe you never hear from them again. But when it comes to Dalvin Cook, I do think that the recent coaching turnover 100%. In Minnesota may be a factor. We made a video about that. Obviously, it has a lot to do with the NFL's vaccination policy and everything, which we're not really going to spend too much time getting into that portion of it on these fantasy streams. We talk about that stuff enough as it is. But the fact is that he is the orchestrator of that running game. He is a big reason why Dalvin Cook has been as successful as he's been. And now that is some uncertainty. I mean, he's still hyper talented, and they do have a lot of the same pieces there in Minnesota.
So for the newbies out there like me, PPR, which is what, points per reception. Explain to everybody what all that means, including me. So break that down, because obviously it's pretty self-explanatory, but of course we're trying to break new people in as well. So
sure. So for sure. So PPR is points per reception. It is just another way of I don't want to say leveling out the field, but if you have, let's say, a wide receiver or whatever that's in the slot, an Edelman, for example, who doesn't score a lot of touchdowns, right? He's going to get you 110 receptions, 1,000 yards, but only maybe 4 or 5 scores. It kind of balances out for the non-standard players when touchdown is so heavy, right?
So for standard scoring, which it's kind of funny they call it standard now, because I think most people play PPR. But standard scoring in the way that fantasy football started was, basically, you're looking at a point every 10 yards, and you're looking at 6 points for a touchdown score. And that was basically how most, wide receivers and running backs, that was the way that they scored their points. So if you had 100 yards rushing and you had 1 touchdown, then you're looking at a guy who scored 16 points. If you have a guy who got 2 short yardage carries and had 2 carries for 5 yards and 2 touchdowns, you're looking at just over 12 points from a guy like that. Correct. So what PPR did was it changed the game a little bit. So like David said, you got Wes Welker or people like that who are high volume target guys, not necessarily scoring a lot, not necessarily picking up a lot of yards, but getting a lot of catches. So you have points per reception, and half PPR is pretty popular as well.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a huge industry. And again, I can't tell you how many years people have asked me. LaRock has probably asked me before he's like, you got to get into it. I've never wanted to get into it. But now if we're moving Sports Wars and Geeks and Gamers into it, I'm definitely going to, invest my time and energy into learning more about it so we can maximize it. Because it is. We were talking to someone the other day who's going to be on Sports Wars, and they were explaining, and it's not that we don't know this, but hearing it from another person is like, this is a huge, market that we can break into, and we can talk sports, and we don't have to worry about all the other stuff we talk about. So sometimes we talk about the things outside of sports within the sports world. Now we can just focus on the things in the sports world from this perspective.
Yeah. And I saw a couple of people talking about Kamara. Kamara had a rough season because there was not a lot of continuity there, in my opinion. Obviously, him and Breeze were like this the entire time he was there. So you're still saying that you think with Jameis and with Taysom that he'll be just as effective, or you think he'll be as effective? Or you're frozen again, David?
He's frozen again. Freaking Florida internet, man. Florida man internet. I personally,
Florida man bad.
And again, I'll speak as someone who obviously doesn't follow the fantasy game, but I can't see how he's going to be just as effective with Jameis Winston as his quarterback. I just can't see that. But
me neither.
I'll be interested to see what David's answer is. But
so the thing is the touches, right? It is about touches. So in fantasy football, if someone could be less effective, but if they get more touches, then they are still going to score. They are still going to produce, especially those targets. If you have a running back who consistently is getting 10
little catches
targets,
out of the backfields, yeah.
Exactly. That's major when you're playing PPR leagues, because you're talking about that point is worth just as much if he had 10 yards rushing.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, that's the way you have to start thinking about those things. Now, when it comes to a couple quarterbacks that we're a little bit uncertain about, we talked about Aaron Rodgers a little bit, what that means. Him coming back means that now Davante Adams is going to be probably a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy when you're looking at the amount of targets, when you're looking at the red zone targets that he gets. So Davante Adams coming back, who knows for next year? I wouldn't take him in a dynasty league necessarily, but when we're talking about for your league and for your daily fantasy matchups, Davante Adams is going to be a monster, assuming that him and Aaron Rodgers are still on the same page.
Yeah. Now, who was the couple of top quarterbacks in fantasy football last year?
We can look at that. I actually pulled them up because I wanted to be able to reference these things. Now, it's not always who you'd think. Now, who do you think, Jeremy, as someone who doesn't know anything about fantasy football? Who do you think was the top?
Well, I know Brady is not ever a top fantasy guy, at least typically speaking. But I would assume Mahomes has got to be up there. I would assume that Mahomes has got to be a top guy. And of course, Aaron Rodgers had a ridiculous season last year. He was the NFL MVP. So I would imagine he's up there based on just the fact of the sheer numbers those guys put up. But so let's see. So Josh Allen, holy shit.
Yeah. Now this is for just, general scoring. If you guys are doing things in your leagues, which I do a lot with alternative scoring, where you have big play bonuses or bonuses for big yard games, things like that. The scoring will be a little different, but when we're talking about standard scoring for quarterbacks, this is the list that we have for 2020, and David is back yet again. Now we were talking about, it's all right. We were talking about, what quarterbacks, Jimmy asked the question, kind of what quarterbacks had the best numbers as far as fantasy last year, compared to, what we think they might do this year. And yeah, Josh Allen was the top scorer in most leagues, for last year's fantasy, averaging 25 points a game. Kyler Murray right behind him. These are both guys who scored a lot of touchdown on their feet as well, which is important. A passing touchdown is 4 points. A rushing touchdown is worth 6 points. So that's a big factor when it comes to
I'm sure quarterbacks. I'm assuming Cam Newton was probably a really good fantasy quarterback back when he was at his prime of his career.
Yes. He was, frustratingly so, because I fucking hated Cam Newton, but he was effective. And like you said, Tom Brady is not typically one of the guys who is going to be a top 5 guy in fantasy. Now, you look at last year, he did have a good year, 8 last year. He had some up games, he had some down games. David's just a spinning thing to me. Can you see him?
I would just go off camera, David. If you can click the off cam, that'll be better. That way we don't see you freezing up. But yeah, I mean, I'm curious, like what Brady's numbers were back when he, 2007 season, when he
that was a massive year, right? 50 touchdowns. Yeah. That's going to be a massive year. He had a ton of yards. But it just depends. Tom Brady traditionally has not been the guy to put up those type of numbers, even though the Patriots do great.
Right. Because, look at Cam Newton, who was absolute trash last year, but he's still a top 16 fantasy guy, which, again, I'm sure he had quite a bit of rushing touchdowns last year. I don't remember how many he had, but if you just look at him on paper, he was a terrible quarterback. But from a fantasy perspective, he was still effective.
Yeah, and 187, I don't know exactly what you're talking about. You bring up a good point. So again, if you're not someone who's necessarily played fantasy, or maybe you've played in leagues where some people don't play as often, quarterbacks are one of those things where the names often draw people in. Most of the time, you don't want to spend a first, second, third, fourth, fifth round pick on one of these guys. You'll have a couple guys. You will have your Aaron Rodgers and your Patrick Mahomes that'll go like in the second round or something. But what you're really looking for in fantasy football is value. One of the things that there are not a lot of are workhorse running backs. So that is typically where you see, even the 10th best running back may get drafted before the best quarterback does, because easier to replace these numbers when you look at all these guys. You know, you're looking at 100 points difference between Kirk Cousins and Josh Allen. Less than that. 90 points over a season. You know, so if Kirk Cousins can get you 20 points a game, Josh Allen gets you 25, you might want to wait. I personally almost never pick a quarterback until the 10th, 11th, 12th round because I would just rather take one of these guys down here than spend one of those big picks to get, to get a guy like Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes. Because I just feel like they're more replaceable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure David would probably say the same thing. Now, when we do look, because I did pull up, I wanted to see what people were talking about specifically right now. This is just an overall generalized average draft position for, the top 200 right now. And this is what I'm talking about. When you look at average draft position, you see Christian McCaffrey pretty much going number one overall in basically everything, right? So Christian McCaffrey, average draft position, round one, pick one. And then when you look at, 3, 4, 5, 6, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Zeke Elliott, Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor, those are where people are going with those picks, which is normal. Normal for fantasy is for all those running backs to go down in the first round. Some people might reach and take a wide receiver if you really like them, like a Tyreek Hill, like a Stephon Diggs. But for the most part, you're going to be very running back heavy. Average draft position for quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes, the only one getting drafted in the second round. Everyone else is 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, all the way down.
Now, for you, like for someone that plays fantasy and also follows the game, like on a fan level, like, do you find yourself going, that guy's good for fantasy, but I fucking hate his guts, so I don't want to pick him?
Yeah, 100%.
And how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that?
Like, you pick them usually.
You pick them?
One thing I try to avoid is drafting anyone from the Bears. Not because the Bears are just bad in general, which sometimes they are, but because I feel like I can't think with a clear mind. I also have never bet on my team before like that because I don't feel like I feel like I'm biased, right? I feel like I'm not making a clear decision either because I just want them to win or do well, or because I'm such a cynic that I don't think they'll do well. So I underestimate. So I just try to avoid it. But when there's a good pick there, you can't really avoid it all the time.
I like seeing my boy Derrick Henry up there as one of the top picks. I like seeing that. David's in like the 5th different location he's been in now.
I'm trying. I restarted the entire computer. At this point, if this doesn't work, I just drive to Jeremy's house.
Yeah, you might as well. You're not far. You're not far.
But so what we've kind of been talking about was we got some questions asked about dealing with quarterbacks, drafting quarterbacks versus how running backs typically go. Jeremy just asked me the question if there's anybody as a fan of the game that you maybe hate their guts, or maybe you don't think they're a great player necessarily, but they end up doing really well fantasy wise and kind of like making those decisions.
Oh, that's a good one. So pretty much you got to put your fan bias to the side.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's why I almost never deal with any Chicago Bears players, because I feel like I can't make an analytical decision. I feel like I'm usually too biased.
That's tough. That's the difference between a standard and a PPR, right?
Yeah. And also one thing, Jeremy just mentioned Derrick Henry, and I think you have some thoughts on Derrick Henry this year with the addition of Julio Jones.
So that entire team is going to be run completely different with Arthur Smith not there. For one, Derrick Henry really doesn't catch the ball, right? He's not Kamara. He's not Barkley. Yeah. With Julio there, are they going to attempt to spread it more? Are they still going to be run first? I don't know. And the problem with Derrick Henry is, yes, he's a beast. Eventually, all those carries and touches, they're going to wear down a person. Is this the year that he finally breaks and missed a couple games? I mean, because he's had 350 touches the last 2 years.
He's a workhorse. He's a workhorse.
Eventually, the tires wear out. Is this the year? I mean, I don't know. To me, I want my running backs to be satellite backs. I want them to catch the ball. I want them to be on first, second, third down. I want them to split outside to be able to, get mismatches. Henry's just a bruiser, and that's great. But I don't. Eventually, the tires are going to break.
Yeah, but and I think more so than just that is the fact that now you have Julio, which in theory you think, hey, it can open things up, but it will result in fewer touches. Like
100%,
no question about that.
Now I see Jonathan's asking, are we going to do a Geeks and Gamers fantasy league?
Yes, we are. So that's one thing I was talking about was that these are going to kind of lead up. We're going to do some previews as we go through training camp and preseason. And when we get to that, week 3 or week 4 of preseason, we do intend to do a Sports Wars fantasy draft with some people from Geeks and Gamers that may or may not be appearing on these shows, but are still, into football and have played fantasy before. So that'll be a lot of fun. And David's probably going to laugh at us all. And then there's going to be some bullshit happen. And we'll like somebody that doesn't deserve to win will end up winning the league. And David will be second with the best team. That's probably what will happen.
It's the worst.
Yeah. You imagine if we get Krista Nova to get a fantasy league and just
no, I'm not letting her play.
But yeah, I mean, I'm starting to kind of get it already. I mean, I'm looking at this breakdown and the fact that Jalen Hurts is within 2 positions of Tom Brady makes you understand the whole dynamic of fantasy.
It's all numbers.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
So,
in I believe it was in 20.
And there he goes again. So
every time David gets on a roll.
I know every time.
2017, Blake.
Yeah, he's done. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
What he's about to talk about is in 20, again, he said 2015, 2016, Blake Bortles just had a crazy year. And that year, funnily enough, I went streaming quarterbacks because I just did not have really any good options at quarterback. I didn't get one of those top 8, top 10 guys. So I waited to the last moment. I picked up like Blake Bortles off the wire 1 week, something like that. And him and Alan Hearns won me my league. Because Alan Hearns had a streak where he just had a touchdown for like 9 straight weeks. Blake Bortles was putting up crazy numbers, and he ended up being like a top 5, top 6 fantasy quarterback, and I just rolled with it. So, it can work out that way sometimes when it comes to fantasy. Yeah, like you said, Jalen Hurts, because they know that Jalen's going to run the ball enough. He's going to pick up more rushing touchdowns by far than somebody like Tom Brady. Yeah. But you have interesting things. Like I said, the running backs are really your weird. When it comes to fantasy, the running backs will be your weird picks because you'll be picking backup running backs. I will be picking backup running backs well before I pick my quarterback. Because it's such a value. You're starting 1 quarterback, but you're starting 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and 1 flex position that can be running back, wide, or tight end.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And I'm already seeing opportunities to kind of go, I'd pick that guy up because I think that guy can make a difference, even though he's not a big name. So I totally see the dynamic starting to kind of develop now in my mind, and how and why quarterbacks are really something that people don't pick early on. I totally understand why, because they are very kind of replaceable in terms of their fantasy. The benefits to having them on fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one tight end that will be the outlier is Kelsey. Kelsey can basically be treated as a top tier wide receiver because that's the utilization that he gets. That's the amount of targets he gets. And another thing that you have to factor in is, at that position, how much more value does someone like Travis Kelsey have over a different pickup there? And because you have to play a tight end, and Kelsey's points are astronomical compared to a lot of other tight ends. So that's a great value play if you pick up Travis Kelsey in the first round like that.
Right.
So a lot of different things to go over. One thing I did want to talk about a little bit was the Deshaun Watson situation, because one thing that you don't want when you're going into a fantasy football draft is uncertainty, just like your NFL team doesn't want uncertainty. And we have Deshaun Watson, who not only is he facing all the assault charges, and the NFL said as of now he's good to play, that could change at any point in time, but he's also still asking for a trade. Is he someone who
complicates everything?
Is he someone who may be there for training camp? Is he going to actually hold out if he doesn't get that? So what that does is it complicates every single member of the Houston Texans fantasy projections.
Yep. So does a player, so hypothetically, and I know this is a dumb question in theory, but if there are any people out there that have never played fantasy that are looking into it. So for instance, if you have Deshaun Watson on your team and he's a member of the Houston Texans and he gets traded, that doesn't affect his status on your fantasy team.
Correct.
Right. But what it does affect is the production of the players around him that's going to have an impact. Because, like, again, if you go from a Deshaun Watson who's going to maximize the offensive talents of his players around him, and if you take him from that team, you're going to have a second-rate quarterback come in. Then at that point, while it doesn't affect the status of Deshaun Watson as your player, it can affect the status of the other players on the Texans team that you had on your fantasy.
Absolutely.
Teams. So
now I believe Tyrod Taylor. I think Tyrod Taylor's with the Texans now. So with Tyrod Taylor being with the Texans, he might be a okay guy as far as scoring, because he will give you a little bit with his legs. He will probably run in a couple. But as far as everyone else, all of a sudden Brandon Cook's value goes way down. Anthony Miller, who just got traded there from Chicago, his value goes way down, in my opinion. You already got a lot of running backs with the Texans. It's crowded as it is. They signed Phillip Lindsay. I think they got Ingram, and they also have David Johnson, who used to be bell cow for the Cardinals. So all those things, it's tough. It's an unknown risk with all of those guys until we get some clarity on that situation. But yeah, that's the thing. All of a sudden, if Deshaun Watson gets traded to this won't happen, but the Patriots or whatever, then you slot him right in. He's now with the Patriots. I remember when Trent Richardson got traded in the middle of the season, and everybody went crazy, and there were some people that had trade offers because they thought his value was just going to skyrocket with Indy, and it never really did. Right?
Don't remind me.
That
still hurts.
You could tell though, because that dude was the talk of the fucking town after his rookie year. I said the entire time, listen, yes, he scored like 10 or 12 touchdowns, but they were all from inside 5 yards. There was no explosiveness. And he rushed for 950 yards on the season at an average of like 3.8 or 3.6. He just wasn't effective. He just happened to score a lot.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm still like, that's one of the more shocking, like most of the time I feel like, and I know people are going to use Tebow against me, fuck you, but most of the time college players, I feel like I have a good feel for who's going to make it, who's not. Like AJ McCarron, someone I never felt would be an NFL quarterback as much as he did great at Alabama. I figured that Trent Richardson would be better than Mark Ingram. I just never believed Mark Ingram was and he's never been like the next level guy. He's not Derrick Henry, but he has been a solid NFL player. You know what I mean? Trent Richardson was amazing in college. He was incredible. Not just a disaster in the NFL. Disaster after that first season.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark Ingram was effective. You know, he was an effective player with the Saints, effective, for his time with the Ravens at some point. So, yeah, for sure.
And I see somebody says thoughts on Tua. I think Tua has a lot of talent. But if I was an NFL team, I would not put my franchise behind Tua because of the durability. I don't think he is built to last in the NFL. As much as I love Tua, I don't think he can make it. I don't think every time at Alabama, every time he got tackled, we held our breath. Every time. He is just built of glass, it seems. And I would not put my franchise behind Tua based on his durability, not his talent, because I think he has a lot of talent.
Give me Fitz magic, baby. He's still going to be relevant this year. We do have a couple super chats. That Tug Life for $2. G&G team fantasy football competition. Let's go. You're going to get your ass beat. There ain't no doubt about that.
And
But
Tugs,
yes,
you're going to see Tugs appearing on Sports Wars covering hockey. So be on the lookout for that, along with
that
Benny.
is correct.
Tugs will be doing her thing. Benny's going to be doing his thing. And at times they'll collab. They'll have their individual videos. Really excited about that. And it's just to kind of, give that Sports Wars element, the hockey touch that it needs.
Yep, absolutely. So that will be happening. I think you might see a video tomorrow about that. In fact, with Tugs and Benny. And Cooking with Ruthie for $5. I play fantasy football at work. I've only won once. Lol. Well, that's good if we're grading on a curve. Because women, don't play football, but they can play fantasy football. So except for Krista, we won't allow Krista to play because she has no idea what she's doing. But we are going to probably end it there, guys, because we've been going about 40, 45 minutes, and David is just not going to be able to do
rage. He's sending me rage text messages right now. He's not happy. It's all good, brother. But I think next time we will just maybe, depending on that, we may just do a pre-recorded set. We'll get everything figured out, but ultimately, whatever I can do. I mean, I would say I would do whatever I can to help David in his internet situation, but I can't even help my own at this point. So I don't really understand what's going on in Florida, but Ryan's moving here, so we're all fucked.
My internet's going to be way better than theirs. I guarantee that.
Florida does have like three different. There's 3 different areas of the state. There's the lower Alabama area where I live. There's Central Florida, and then there's Miami, Southern Florida. So it's like 3 different states.
People talk about Tebow. Motherfucker he ain't gonna fucking do any
QB1 by week 8.
I hope so, Jeremy. I hope that you draft Tim Tebow in our league and you waste a pick on him. Even if you draft him, even if you use your 14th pick to pick him, it's fucking waste.
I would not draft Tim Tebow if I'm playing fantasy. So
that's good. Porn star Jimmy for $5. You guys got me in fantasy. I'm not a big Jimmy G guy when it comes to fantasy. Not the way they necessarily run that system. Maybe a streaming option, but as far as week in, week out, I'm not a big fan of Jimmy Garoppolo, really in any way, shape, or form. Trey Lance probably has more upside than Jimmy G at this point, but I probably wouldn't draft either of those guys. But we're not playing standard. We're playing PPR because we're not fucking weirdos playing PPR.
Does Benny have a wrench?
I don't know. I'm looking at the I'm not
signed in on Sports War, so Benny, I'll get you a wrench.
I'll get him one here for that dumb question. Standard. No, we ain't playing standard. Here we go. Add moderator. There we go. Benny is now a moderator. But guys, we are going to get going. Thanks for hanging out. We're going to be doing these a lot. Expect Tuesdays and potentially some Saturday streams like this, going over fantasy, doing some previews. It will be smoother next time, hopefully. But thank you all for being here. I'll check Streamlabs one more time.
We appreciate it. And we know we're not going to get thousands of people watching these, at least not right now, but I think we can build it up over the course of time to really get some eyes in here. But we appreciate the ones that are here, the ones that are interested in this, and we're looking to build that foundation with Sports Wars, and then I think we can take it some places.
That's right. All right, guys, thanks for being here. We'll talk to you later. Peace.